Many of us feel that safekeeping our money in savings accounts is enough. But there are many different ways of making your money grow with the help of people and organizations that are well-versed in managing funds. So today, we'll talk about the pros and cons of investing in a mutual fund, UITF, and a VUL. We'll also help you decide which one is the best for you. I'm Edric. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back here.
I was going to say, welcome back. Yeah, so better times for our economy. So it's great for us to talk about this again, you know, because there are many people who are starting to invest. So let's get straight to it.
Okay.
Mutual funds, UITF, VUL. Okay. Let's talk about the basic differences again of these three.
Okay, so the underlying theme is they're all investments, and it's just the different kinds of format. Okay, let's talk about the mutual funds first. Mutual funds are basically pooled funds set up as a corporation, and each investor is a shareholder of that fund corporation. So as opposed to a unit investment trust fund, where you can access these investments through a trust department of a bank, and in doing so, you are a participant of the fund. And a VUL is somewhat a bit different from the two former funds because VULs have an insurance component together with the fund investment. So the common denominator among the three would be they're invested in the different kinds of asset classes, whether equities or fixed income. The difference of the latter is that it has an insurance component with it.
Okay. But otherwise, those three formats, or you mentioned forms, right, would be investing in the same underlying assets.
Yes.
Okay. And when you say in the UITF, when you say you partner with, there is no ownership, as opposed to mutual fund, where you said that there is an ownership in the fund company.
Well, a UITF and a mutual fund both have ownership. You have a participation. Technically, you're an owner of the fund, but as opposed to a mutual fund where an investor, since he is a shareholder, would have an extra benefit of having voting rights.
Okay.
Because it's a corporation, so the benefit would be if you have voting rights, you can technically influence the fund managers, the directors of the fund.
I see. Whereas in the UITF you cannot, or in the VUL,
you cannot.
The same way. I see. So let's talk about, so you talked about the differences. Let's talk about pros and cons.
Okay.
Maybe we can go one by one. Let's start with mutual fund.
Okay, mutual fund. First, let's talk about the regulator. Regulator of mutual funds, since it's a corporation, is the SEC. The regulator for a UITF is the central bank, or the Banco Central, and VUL, since it has an insurance component, the Insurance Commission.
I see. Okay. So, sorry, even if there's an investment component of the VUL, even that investment component will be regulated under the Insurance Commission?
Yes.
Because the primary product is an insurance?
Yes.
Okay, that's very clear. Okay.
Okay, so the main difference, mutual funds and UITFs, practically they can invest in anything that the fund manager accredits. As opposed to a VUL, if you would want to go and invest in a specific security, you need clearance from the Insurance Commission. So that's one, I can say, a disadvantage, because you need clearance first every time you would want to look at a new security to be included in your fund, whether it's a new credit on the fixed income side, or a new equity, or a new security on the equity side. So,
and you're saying that those options are done by the consumer and not by the fund manager? Or are you saying this from the perspective of the fund manager?
Those are done, but it's on the perspective of the fund manager.
I see. So from a fund manager's perspective, for the first two you mentioned, UITF and mutual fund, the fund manager has the call on what security or what asset to invest in, whereas the VUL, they have to have clearance first.
They have to have
so
clearance
it's more
for the Insurance Commission, and the Insurance Commission is quite strict in their compliance procedures. And first, for an equity security to be included, it needs to have a 5-year track record and a 3-year dividend history. So practicality, IPOs cannot
be part of that. Understood. Okay. Let's talk and go back to the perspective of the consumer.
Okay.
How much choice does a consumer have in the investments of either three?
Well, Practically, it's rests with the fund manager.
So in all three cases?
It's all in three cases. It rests with the fund manager, and it would be the style of the fund manager and how the mandate is presented to the client. So that's how the different fund houses differ.
Right. Let's talk about maybe the costs involved.
Okay.
So if I'm investing in mutual funds or UITF or VUL, tell me about the costs involved, assuming I put the same amount in all.
Okay.
So, because we can see the pros and cons in that as well.
Okay, sure. A mutual fund and a VUL would have similar costs. There's usually a management fee on an annual basis, and an upfront fee when you would want to invest. It only depends on the different kinds of asset classes. Usually, the equity funds charge higher upfront fees and management fees.
Okay.
Where as a VUL, since it has an insurance component, of course, the insurance part does not come free. So it has an extra charge for getting an insurance as part of your investment in a fund.
Okay, but you're saying apples to apples between a mutual fund and a UITF, it would be identical. The percentage that you pay for the management fee on an annual basis, as you mentioned, would be
similar, almost identical. As the VUL is a bit more technical because of the insurance component.
Understood. So generally, you would spend more for the VULs.
Yes.
Okay. What about in terms of duration? Across the three, are there lock-in periods for these types of investments? And you mentioned the upfront fees. Would those be different for type of?
Well, right now, pooled funds are really meant to be for medium to long-term investments. It's really not meant for an investor to buy and hoping to trade and flip their investments. It's really meant for 3-5 year investments. And nowadays, there has been a lot of promotions of these fund houses to have back-end fees to encourage individuals or investors to lock in at a longer term with them.
Okay, can you explain that? Back-end fees?
Back-end fees, there's that upfront fee or a back-end fee. For an upfront fee, it's
when I enter,
you get charged 1-2% depending on the fund house, and then when you exit, it's already free of
at any point in time.
Sure. As opposed to a back-end, some fund houses offer zero back-end fees if you stay with the fund for 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
And then it's graduated. For example, if you decide to exit the fund after a year, then you pay a corresponding amount of fee. Then it goes down as you approach the 5th year.
I see.
So it encourages long-term investments.
And you're saying that those back-end fees across the three types would be almost identical as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because now it's a competitive environment now.
Sure. Let's talk about the frequency of investing in the three items.
Okay.
No? So, about the easy investment plan types or the cost averaging types. No? If a person will say, okay, you know what, I want to put in regularly across the three, can you detail any nuances in the cost that might be, difference across the three?
Okay. Well, basically, it's the same whether you invest just one time or you invest on a cost averaging on a monthly basis. The only advantage of doing spreading your investment probably you'd be able to average out your investments and try not to time the market because it's really hard to time the market.
Sure.
It's really your time in the market that's really more
I think
important.
my question was more of every time you put in and you invest, there is also a fee charged for the mutual fund, UITF, and the VUL?
Yes.
Across all. And would that fee also be identical, more or less?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not a decision point, no?
It's really not a decision point, and some fund houses usually offer discounted upfront fees if you have reached a certain amount of AUM or assets under management.
Okay. Now let's flip it a little bit and see the perspective of yourself, for example. You talked a little bit about that earlier. From a fund manager's perspective, what is now the difference in these three options? Okay.
Well, it's the details of how the funds are set up. There is more on the restrictions. For example,
like you mentioned earlier,
for example, for the VUL, it's very evident that every new security you would want to include in the fund would need clearance from the insurance commission. Whereas the UITF and a mutual fund, it's practically easy. It's basically the investment committee approval is fine. Mutual funds have a 10% liquidity buffer as opposed to UITFs, where UITFs can be 100% invested at any given point in time.
Right.
Mutual funds, the maximum is up to 90%.
I see. So would you say therefore it's safer?
Well, in time, it can work both ways.
Both ways, I understand.
If the market's good, there's a cash drag.
Risk profiles. So a person realizes I'm conservative or I'm very aggressive as an investor. Would that play a factor in the choice of the three?
I don't think it's the factor of the format. It's more of the asset class.
And is that easily accessible? So a guy walks into a company and says, I want to invest in mutual funds. Who's your fund manager?
Yes, definitely. And it's always in the websites of these institutions.
I see. And then people can just search online to see the track record of people who have performed well. Okay. So maybe in closing, to choose the fund that matches you, you said risk profile is not really a factor. Fund manager is. Any other pointers in mixing and matching personalities with the three?
The important thing to note is, number one, you have to look at the institution. You have to look at the historical returns. The more of not being them really on the top, but the consistency of returns. You have to look at the volatility, how volatile the fund is in the past, basically. And again, look at the overall profile of the fund manager.
Okay, excellent advice. I have so many...
Or UITF investment. Is it similar to the capital gain of a stock price?
Oh, okay, yeah, it's quite simple, yes. It is similar to a computation and a stock price. Basically, you consider your entry level or your NAV and what would be the NAV right now. So that would be your earnings.
Okay.
So basically, it's similar to a share price.
Okay, and if you decide to cash it in, you just subtract whatever percentage the management fee is, or is that already it?
It's the management fee is already imputed in the NAV, but depends on the institution if they would charge back-end fees. So that's the only charge. Similar to a stock price, stocks. When you sell, there's a lot of commissions that you would.
What about taxes?
Taxes, okay.
Yeah. So when you, let's say you achieve the earnings, you now pull out taxes.
Well, for mutual funds, since it's a corporation and it's already taxed, all of the investments are already taxed at source. The clients need not declare the capital gains. As opposed to UITFs, I think they have to declare.
I see. So there's a difference as well. I see. VULs, where would that?
VULs, because it's more of an insurance. Yeah. So I don't think it would be subject. It would be subject to a different.
Tax system. Good to know.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, now Jane asks, I only have 20,000 pesos to invest at the moment. Should I put it into a mutual fund or UITF? How long do I wait before that amount earns a peso or two?
Okay. 20,000 is really an ideal amount to be included in pooled funds. Whether it's a mutual fund or a UITF, it's really a matter of preference on how accessible the product is to you. The wait actually won't be that long if the markets are really good, such as now. You can actually earn immediately, practically the next day, if the markets really are favorable.
What do you recommend, though? Do you recommend you pull out after just a week or two, or do you recommend you stay in longer?
Funds are meant to be long-term investments.
Okay, and then would you recommend, since, right now she only has 20K, but let's say a month or two from now she has more, should she buy a different mutual fund or UITF or the same, or what would you recommend she do?
Okay, if she started already with a mutual fund or a UITF and is quite comfortable with it, and then probably she can continue to add on to that to make it simpler. One monitoring. You can only monitor just one fund. and if it would be more practical for you to invest in that fund easily.
Yeah. Do you think it's a factor also for Jane in terms of the back-end fees? She needs to look into that, right? Because if there are back-end fees, then she wants to hold for 5 years and not have to pay those things.
Yeah, because there are right now some fund houses that offer or promote long-term investments. And in order to do that, they usually have back-end fees.
Okay, but they probably ask for more of an investment, right? A larger amount
Not
to invest?
necessarily.
Really?
Yes, because mutual funds or pooled funds are really meant to be for small investors.
Okay.
Good to know.
Okay, now Ken asks, are VULs transferable to immediate family?
Well, since a VUL is an insurance product, usually you have a beneficiary and the principal owner cannot transfer it.
Okay. So you just have to hang on to it.
Yeah, because you're the principal. What about the mutual funds or UITFs?
The mutual funds, it's I don't think it is transferable.
Are there and/or situations for that? Like for spouses, you can do that?
Yes, you can do and/or, you can do ITFs.
I see.
For all.
Okay. But not transfer?
Not transfer.
Good to know.
Okay, now there's another VUL question from Tristan, who asks, I already have an existing life insurance from my parents, but a VUL sounds like a better deal. Do I keep both or do I cancel my current life insurance and switch? Is it possibly transferable, and how much do I stand to lose if ever I cancel my existing one?
Okay, so well, to answer the question is I suggest not to cancel it.
Right.
Number one, it would be more expensive to open or get a new insurance, if especially if that insurance policy was gotten like years back. VULs right now are more practical, especially for those who would want an all-in-one product. You'd have an insurance and then an investment component with it.
Since he already has insurance, is it really necessary for him to get a VUL? Would it make more sense he keep the insurance he has and get a mutual fund or UITF?
Well, it depends on the person. If he thinks that his insurance policy is not enough to cover for his future needs, then he would probably be more practical for him to add more insurance through a VUL. If not, then probably he can just choose to invest directly now in a UITF or in a mutual fund.
In what instance is it better to get a VUL rather than to get a separate insurance, which is equivalent to what you get in that VUL, and then choose your own mutual fund or UITF?
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's more the practicality right now. VULs have become quite popular nowadays because of the fact that you have participation in the markets, and at the same time you have insurance component. And unlike the previous insurance, traditional insurance that you only get, the beneficiary gets the proceeds, now for a VUL, you can have and withdraw at any time. Or there's a certain period that you can withdraw the proceeds.
Okay, although you could do that with your mutual fund or UITF.
Yes, you can do that at the same time, but if you want an insurance component with it, then it would be more practical to just buy one product.
Okay. You know, Tristan also asked about canceling.
Okay.
The cost of canceling if he says,
well, the canceling,
I want to
you'd be if you decide to cancel, cash in, more of cashing in the insurance policy, is you'd be subject to the existing cash value of that insurance policy
at the time you
would
cash it in.
Yes.
Okay. That's the only other fee. There are no other pre-termination penalties.
That's I would believe that would be about it.
Thank you, Mike. Send us your money questions via email, Facebook, or Twitter, and we'll try to answer them in our upcoming episodes or on our next Q&A Friday.
Choose what makes sense to you. Find out who you can trust, especially in being able to manage these funds. Thanks again, Mike.